Okay, so this isn't a story I usually tell. Most of my stuff, it's about things out there, things you stumble into. But this happened in here. In my head, mostly, and in my house. My house on Elm Street in Oakwood, Ohio. Yeah, I know. Elm Street. Trust me, I've heard all the jokes that didn't seem so funny after a while. It was about a year and a half ago. Vanessa and I had just moved in, found the place for a steal, honestly. Older build, brick ranch, good bones, decent-sized yard. Had that quiet, tree-lined street vibe, exactly what we were looking for after years in those cramped city apartments. Vanessa, she loved it immediately. I remember her standing on the porch, sunlight catching her hair. A kind of auburn gold that always seemed to shift with the light, just beaming. She had on these fitted jeans that day, the kind that really hugged her hips, and a simple white tank top. Every time she moved, I swear I could feel a pull, like a physical current. Her smile, it was infectious, crinkling the corners of her eyes. She just looked vibrant, alive, like she belonged there, in that sunlight, in that new life we were starting, and I just wanted to wrap her up and keep her safe in it. We spent the first few weeks just unpacking, painting, making it ours. Vanessa had this knack for interior design, always knew where to put a throw pillow or a piece of art to make a room feel lived in, cozy. That she'd be up on a step ladder, stretching to hang a curtain rod, and I'd just catch myself staring at the way her calves tensed, the delicate curve of her ankle as she shifted her weight. Or how her top would ride up just a fraction, hinting at the smooth skin of her lower back. It wasn't even about sex. Not really, not in those moments. It was just appreciation. For her beauty, for her presence, for the way she made everything around her feel brighter. Even if my mind did occasionally drift to what it would feel like to run my hands up that exposed skin. One evening, after we'd finally gotten the last box unpacked from the garage, I decided to install a new security camera system. Mostly for peace of mind, It was a nice house, and even in a quiet neighborhood like Oakwood, you hear stories. Plus, I'm a bit of a tech guy, always have been. Found the system online, pretty advanced. Wireless, motion-activated, night vision, cloud storage, the whole 9 yards. You could check the feeds right from your phone, anywhere. Vanessa just rolled her eyes, but good-naturedly. "Overkill, babe," she'd said, laughing, her glossy lips pulling into that familiar, playful smirk. "Who's gonna bother us on Elm Street?" I just shrugged, kissed her forehead, and got to work. I put cameras in the living room, the kitchen, the main hallway, and one pointing at the back door. Figured that covered the main entry points and common areas. Took me a good few hours running power, connecting to Wi-Fi, configuring the app. By the time I was done, it was late. Vanessa was already asleep, curled up in bed, the moonlight casting a soft glow on her face, making her cheekbones look impossibly smooth. I stood there for a moment, just watching her breathe, the gentle rise and fall of her chest under the sheet. A wave of tenderness, and that familiar quiet ache of desire, washed over me. I wanted to just lie down beside her, pull her close. But first, I had to do a final check of the cameras. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, pulling up the app. Everything looked good. Live feeds were clear. Motion detection was active. I set up notifications for any movement after 11 p.m. Then I finally slipped under the covers, wrapping an arm around Vanessa, feeling the warmth of her body against mine. She stirred, let out a soft sigh, and snuggled closer. I closed my eyes, feeling safe, content. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly at home. The first few days were uneventful. The cameras would occasionally ping me about a cat walking across the lawn or a tree branch swaying in the wind. False alarms easily dismissed. I'd check the app, see nothing, and go about my day. Vanessa would tease me, "Still checking on our non-existent intruders, paranoid much?" I'd just grin and say, "Better safe than sorry." Then little things started. Very, very little things, things I initially blamed on my own forgetfulness or Vanessa's absent-mindedness. I'd be sure I'd close the living room blinds before bed, only to find them slightly open in the morning. I'd swear I left my coffee mug on the kitchen counter, but it would be in the sink when I came down for breakfast. Vanessa would say, "Oh, I must have moved it," or, "You probably just forgot, honey." And I'd agree. It made sense. We were still settling in, routines weren't fully established. But the instances started to add up. Too many small things. One morning I went to make coffee, and the sugar bowl, which I always kept in the same spot on the counter, was on the dining room table. I asked Vanessa. She looked genuinely confused. No, I didn't touch it, why would I? I just shrugged it off. Must be sleepwalking, I joked, trying to sound light, but a tiny, almost imperceptible prickle of unease started in the back of my mind. It was about 3 weeks in when I finally caught something that I'd had a rough night's sleep, kept tossing and turning. Woke up before Vanessa, around 6 a.m. and couldn't get back to sleep. My phone was on the nightstand, and on a whim I opened the security app. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just idly scrolling through the motion-activated clips from the night before. Most of them were just the wind setting off the outdoor camera, or a moth fluttering too close to the lens. Then I saw one. Timestamp 2:17 a.m. Living room camera. It showed movement. My heart gave a little thump. Probably a cat got in, I thought, though we didn't have a cat. I tapped the clip to play. It was dark, of course, but the night vision was surprisingly clear, casting everything in that eerie green-gray glow. The living room was empty. Then from the hallway, a figure emerged. A woman. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. My first thought was intruder. My second thought was, who the hell is that? She was wearing what looked like an old, faded nightgown. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She walked slowly, almost aimlessly, across the living room. She paused by the bookshelf, ran a finger along the spines of my books. Then she moved to the window, peered out for a moment, and then just stood there, staring into the empty room. I felt a cold dread seep into my bones. This wasn't a glitch. This was a person in my house, while Vanessa and I were asleep. Then from the kitchen camera feed I saw another clip, timestamp 2:25 a.m. The same woman now in the kitchen. She opened the fridge, peered inside, then closed it. She went to the sink, filled a glass of water, and drank it slowly. Her movements were calm, unhurried, like she owned the place. I felt a surge of adrenaline, cold and sharp. I had to wake Vanessa. But then another clip popped up from the hallway camera. 2:30 a.m. A man. He was taller, broader. He came out of what I realized was our guest bedroom, the one we hadn't even finished furnishing yet, and walked down the hall. He stopped at the living room archway, looked in, then turned and went into the kitchen. I watched, mesmerized and horrified, as the man joined the woman in the kitchen. They didn't speak. They just stood there for a moment, a quiet, domestic scene. Then the man reached out, gently touched the woman's arm. She looked up at him, and even in the grainy night vision, I could see a faint smile. It was unsettling, intimate. Like I was watching something I absolutely should not be seeing. Then a third figure. A child. A little girl, maybe 5 or 6, in pajamas, carrying a worn-out teddy bear. She padded silently into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. The woman knelt down, put an arm around her, and kissed her forehead. The man ruffled the girl's hair. They were a family. They were a family in my house. I watched them for what felt like an eternity. They moved through my home, using my things, inhabiting my space. They sat on my couch, they ate cereal at my dining table, which I later found perfectly clean, of course. They looked normal, completely mundane, and that was the most terrifying part. There was no theatricality, no ghostly shimmering, just people, living their lives in my house, when I wasn't looking. The clips ended around 3:45 a.m. with the family disappearing back into the guest bedroom, and the woman turning off the kitchen light. I sat there, shivering, even though the room was warm. My mind raced, trying to find a rational explanation. A hack? A prank? But the footage was so clear, so real, and the objects I'd found moved. It all clicked into place with a sickening thud. I looked at Vanessa, still sleeping peacefully beside me, her chest rising and falling with such innocent regularity. Her face was soft, relaxed, a stray strand of hair falling across her flawless cheekbone. I wanted to shake her awake, scream at her to look at what I'd found, but how? How do you even begin to explain something like this? Hey honey, guess what? There's another family living in our house when we're asleep, and I have it all on video. She'd think I'd lost my mind. I spent the next few hours replaying the clips, zooming in, trying to find any anomaly, any sign of a trick. Nothing. It was just them. A family, living in my house. When Vanessa finally woke up, stretching languidly, her bare arm reaching for me, I just mumbled something about having a bad dream. She propped herself up on an elbow, her soft breast pressing against the sheet, and looked at me with concern. You okay, babe? You look like you haven't slept at all. I forced a smile. Just a weird one, that's all. I couldn't tell her. Not yet. I had to figure it out first. That day, I went to work in a daze that I kept replaying the footage in my head, the images burned into my memory. The woman's quiet movements, the man's gentle touch, the little girl's teddy bear. It was all so normal, so domestic. And so utterly, impossibly wrong that I started checking the camera feeds obsessively. Every night after Vanessa was asleep, I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, waiting for the motion notifications to start pinging on my phone, and they did. Every night. The family had a routine. The woman who I started calling the mother in my head would usually be the first one up, around 1:30 a.m. She'd go to the kitchen, get water, sometimes just stand there, looking out the window into the dark yard. Then the man, the father, would appear, usually from the guest room. He'd join her. Sometimes they'd talk in hushed tones, though the audio on the cameras wasn't good enough to pick up anything intelligible. Then the child would join them, and they'd have a quiet breakfast of cereal or toast. They'd read the newspaper, or what looked like a newspaper, though I never found one. In the morning they'd sit on my couch watching my TV, though it was always off when I woke up. They'd even sometimes just sit in the dining room, looking through what appeared to be photo albums. My photo albums? I checked. All mine were exactly where I'd left them. The horror wasn't in jump scares or ghostly apparitions. It was in the sheer, mundane normalcy of it all. It was the invasion of my privacy, the violation of my home, the unsettling knowledge that another existence was running parallel to mine, right under my nose, in the most intimate of spaces. I started trying to catch them. I'd set up little traps. I'd leave a specific book on the coffee table, slightly ajar, with a bookmark in a particular page. In the morning, it would be closed, the bookmark gone, or moved to a different page. I'd leave a specific kitchen utensil out on the counter. In the morning, it would be washed and put away in the drawer. They were cleaning up after themselves, they were making sure I wouldn't know. But I did know, and the knowing was slowly eating away at me. Sleep became a terrifying prospect. I didn't want to close my eyes, didn't want to cede control of my home to them. But exhaustion eventually won out, and every morning the new batch of footage would be there waiting for me, a fresh dose of quiet dread. Vanessa started noticing my exhaustion. "You're always so tired, honey," she'd say, her brow furrowed with concern. "Are you getting enough sleep?" She'd reach out, her fingers brushing my arm, and a jolt would go through me. I'd want to tell her everything, to share the burden, but the words just wouldn't come. How do you explain the unexplainable? How do you ask someone to believe in something so profoundly absurd? One evening we were having dinner. Vanessa had cooked her famous lasagna, and the smell filled the house, warm and comforting. She was wearing a loose-fitting sundress, her shoulders bare, and as she leaned across the table to pour me some wine, the fabric of her dress shifted, revealing the delicate curve of her collarbone, the hint of the swell of her breast. My eyes lingered, drawn to her beauty, her vibrancy. I felt that familiar surge of desire, that longing for her touch, her closeness. But even as I looked at her, my mind was already drifting to the footage I would watch later that night. Would they be in the kitchen again? Would they sit at this very table? Would they touch the wine glasses we were using? The thought was like a cold hand squeezing my heart, chilling the warmth of the moment, curdling the desire into something uncomfortable, almost guilty. I felt like I was betraying her, keeping this secret, letting this thing invade our shared space. "You're quiet tonight," Vanessa said, pulling me out of my thoughts. She reached across the table, her hand covering mine. Her skin was soft, warm. "Everything okay?" I squeezed her hand. "Yeah, just thinking about work." It was a lie, and the lie tasted bitter. The incidents on the camera became more personal. One night, I saw the mother in our bedroom. Not the guest bedroom, our bedroom. She stood by the dresser looking at the framed photos of Vanessa and me. She picked one up, a photo from our vacation to the Outer Banks, Vanessa laughing, her hair windswept, her legs tanned and bare, the sand clinging to her delicate feet. The mother held it for a long moment, then put it back down carefully. She didn't smile. Her expression was unreadable, just observant. Then she walked over to Vanessa's side of the bed. She stood there watching Vanessa sleep. Just watching, her head tilted slightly that I could feel my blood run cold, that my heart hammered against my ribs, that I wanted to scream, to smash my phone, to rip the cameras out of the walls. But I couldn't, that I was paralyzed, forced to watch this silent, intimate violation. The mother reached out a hand, hovering inches above Vanessa's sleeping form, that I held my breath, my knuckles white from gripping the phone. She didn't touch her. She just held her hand there for a moment, then slowly, almost regretfully, withdrew it. She turned and left the room, disappearing back into the guest bedroom. I didn't sleep at all that night, that I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to Vanessa's quiet breathing beside me. The image of the mother standing over her, her hand hovering, was burned into my mind. The line between what was real and what was on the screen began to blur. Was it just a recording? Or was it happening now, even as I lay awake? The house felt different, colder, heavier. I tried to tell Vanessa again, the next morning, that I had the footage ready on my phone. "Vanessa," I started, my voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "There's something I need to show you." She was in the kitchen, making coffee, wearing a silk robe that shimmered around her as she moved, revealing tantalizing glimpses of her figure. She turned, a mug in her hand, her expression one of tired patience. "What is it, honey? You've been acting so strange lately that you're barely sleeping. You look awful." "It's the cameras," I said, holding out my phone. "I've been watching the footage, that there's a family, that they're here, every night." She looked at me, then at the phone, then back at me, her brow furrowed. "A family? What are you talking about?" "Just watch," I pleaded, my voice cracking, that I played the clip of the mother standing over her bed. Vanessa watched the screen for a few seconds, her eyes narrowed. Then she looked at me, a strange expression on her face. That's you, isn't it?" "What?" I stared at her. "No, that's not me. That's the mother. The woman." She took the phone from my hand, rewound the clip. "Look," she said, pointing at the screen. "That's you, that you're wearing those dark pajamas you like. And that's your messy hair when you get up in the middle of the night." I snatched the phone back, staring at the screen. The figure was indeed wearing dark pajamas. And the hair, it was messy. But it wasn't me, that it couldn't be. The height was wrong, the build was wrong. The face, though blurry in the night vision, was definitely not mine. "No, Vanessa, it's not me. Look closer. That's a woman." I was practically shouting. She sighed, a long, weary sound. "Honey, you're exhausted, that you're seeing things, that's clearly you, probably sleepwalking or something, that you've been so stressed about these cameras, you're imagining things." "Imagining things?" I felt a surge of frustrated anger. What about the sugar bowl? The book? The utensils? Am I imagining that too? People forget things, darling. People move things, that we're still getting used to the house, that you're letting this get to you." She came over, put her arms around me, resting her head on my chest. Her scent, a mix of coffee and her natural warmth, was usually comforting, now it felt like a cage. "You need to turn those cameras off. Get some sleep. This isn't healthy." I held her close, but my mind was screaming. She didn't believe me, she couldn't see it, or worse, she couldn't see it. That was the turning point. After that, I stopped trying to convince her that I just watched, that I watched them every night, a silent, unseen voyeur in my own home, that I started to notice patterns. The father always seemed to wear the same faded blue shirt. The mother had a particular way of brushing her hair behind her ear. The child always hugged her teddy bear tight. They were so real, so utterly, undeniably real. My sleep schedule became completely inverted, that I'd try to stay awake, drinking coffee, energy drinks, anything to keep my eyes open. I'd sit in the living room in the dark, staring at the empty space, waiting for them to appear. But they never did. The moment my eyes closed, the moment I drifted off, that's when they would emerge. It was like they knew. They knew the exact moment I lost consciousness, and that was their cue. The exhaustion was brutal. My eyes were perpetually bloodshot. My hands trembled. Vanessa grew more and more worried. She tried to get me to see a doctor, a therapist. "You're not yourself, honey," she'd say, her voice thick with concern. That she'd try to get me to go for walks, to eat proper meals. That she'd try to pull me into bed, her body pressing against mine, her lips soft and seeking. And even as I felt the familiar spark of desire, the comfort of her touch, It was always overshadowed by the thought of them. Of the other family. Of what they were doing or would do, when I finally succumbed to sleep. The thought of them being so close to her, to us, while we were vulnerable, filled me with a sickening protectiveness, a desperate, futile rage. One night I was watching the footage from the previous night. The father was in the living room standing by the window. He turned slowly and looked directly at the camera. Not at the camera, not really, more like through it, directly at me. His expression was blank, unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, a depth, a stillness that sent a shiver down my spine. It was as if he knew I was watching. He knew I was there, a ghost in my own home, observing their lives. Then he did something that made my blood run cold. He raised his hand, slowly, and he waved a small, almost imperceptible wave. A gesture of acknowledgement. Or perhaps, a greeting. I dropped my phone. It clattered to the hardwood floor, the screen shattering. I scrambled to pick it up, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. The screen was cracked, but the image was still there, frozen on the father's face, his hands still raised in that chilling wave. I couldn't breathe. He knew, they weren't just existing parallel to us, they were aware, they were playing a game, and I was the only one who even knew the game existed. I stared at the broken screen, then at the empty living room. The one I knew was full of their unseen presence. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. My mind raced, trying to grasp the implications. If they knew I was watching, what else did they know? Had they seen me watch Vanessa? Had they seen me watching them? I became convinced they were leaving subtle messages for me. A specific item slightly moved, a light left on in a particular room. It was their way of communicating, of letting me know they were there, that they were active, that they were aware of my futile attempts to understand them. The house started to feel like a trap. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret. Every creak of the floorboards was a whisper from the other side. I started seeing things out of the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement, a fleeting shadow. Even when I was wide awake. My mind, deprived of sleep and consumed by paranoia, was playing tricks on me. Or was it? Vanessa, bless her heart, tried everything. She cooked my favorite meals, she tried to get me to talk, she even suggested we go away for a weekend just to clear my head. Please, honey, she pleaded one evening, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, wearing a silky nightgown, her bare legs drawn up, her feet delicate and pale against the dark wood floor. Her voice was soft, laced with a desperation that twisted my gut. Just for a couple of days. We could go to the lake. Get some fresh air. You haven't been yourself in weeks. I looked at her beautiful worried face, at the way her glossy lips trembled slightly. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to escape. But the thought of leaving the house, of not watching, of not knowing what they would do in our absence, it was unbearable. What if they took over completely? What if we came back and found them living our lives and we were the ones who were gone? I can't, I mumbled, my voice rough. I can't leave, not now. Her face crumpled. She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw a flicker of something I hadn't seen before. Fear, not fear of the house or of the unseen family, but fear of me. Fear of what I had become. You're scaring me, she whispered, her voice barely audible. That broke something in me. I reached out, wanted to comfort her, to reassure her, but my hands felt clumsy, my words hollow. I'm sorry, Vanessa. I can't explain it, you wouldn't understand. She stood up, her movements slow, deliberate. She walked to the dresser, picked up a small overnight bag. I think I need to go stay with my sister for a few days, just until you figure things out. My heart sank. Vanessa, no, please. She turned, her eyes red-rimmed. I can't live like this, honey, watching you destroy yourself. I can't. I love you, but I can't. And just like that, she was gone. The house felt even emptier, even colder. Her absence was a gaping wound. But even that wasn't enough to break me free from the grip of the cameras, from the silent, unsettling family that shared my home. I was alone now, truly alone, and the recordings continued. The father started doing things that felt more aggressive, more pointed. He'd move my phone charger from my nightstand to the kitchen counter. He'd leave the bathroom light on, even though I always turned it off. Small, irritating things that felt like a deliberate taunt. One night, I saw the father standing in the hallway just outside my bedroom door that he was looking in directly at me or where I would be sleeping. Then he raised his hand again. But this time, it wasn't a wave that he made a slow, deliberate gesture, like he was drawing a line in the air, a boundary or a threat. The next morning I found a small, smooth stone on my pillow. It wasn't there when I went to bed. It was a river stone, perfectly round, cool to the touch. I picked it up, my fingers trembling. It was a physical object, a tangible link. They were leaving things for me, they were crossing the barrier. I knew then that I couldn't stay, but I also knew I couldn't leave. The house was a part of me now, and they were a part of the house. That I was tethered to this unseen existence. This parallel life that unfolded every night. That I'm still here on Elm Street in Oakwood, Ohio. Vanessa hasn't come back. She calls sometimes, her voice strained, asking if I'm better. I tell her I'm fine, that I'm not, that I'm a husk of who I used to be. My world has shrunk to the confines of these walls, and the glowing screen of my phone. I still watch them. Every night that I watch the mother cook, the father read, the child play with her teddy bear. They are still a family, still mundane, still terrifying. Sometimes I wonder if they're watching me too. If they have their own cameras, their own screens where they observe my movements, my waking hours. If I am their ghost, their unsettling presence that only appears when they are asleep. I've stopped trying to understand it. I've stopped trying to fight it. All I do now is watch, and wait. Because I know with a certainty that chills me to my core that one night, something will be different. One night, the father won't just wave. Or the mother won't just hover. One night, they'll cross that final line. And I won't be able to turn away. I'll be forced to watch, helpless, as they finally, fully, reclaim what they believe is theirs. And I'll be nothing but a fading memory, a nightmare in their perfect quiet home.